how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
To infinity and beyond!
Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking, don't they?
It's classified.
You talking to me?
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
I can't fly!
Expecto Patronum!
Entertainment X.
You never know what you're going to get.
For this episode, I get to talk on the phone with Wayne Kirkpatrick. Wayne was one of the writers on Something Rotten, the musical, and is currently working on Mrs. Doubtfire, the musical adaptation of the film starring the one and only Robin Williams from the 90s. Wayne and I have such a wonderful conversation about his childhood, what got him into writing. He actually writes music for a lot of musicians out of Nashville, and we'll go through a few of them in our conversation. He talks about his brother, what they've created together, and what he's looking towards in the future. This is a wonderful conversation with great insight into his life path and what he did and the steps he took to get to where he is today. I absolutely love this conversation because Wayne has he's literally created jobs for so many people, and he doesn't even see it that way. It's just writing music and creating these wonderful stories. So I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did having the conversation with Wayne on the phone. Enjoy. We're back, and today with me is Wayne Kirkpatrick. Wayne, thanks for chatting with me today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I want to get right down to it. Why did you start writing?
Well, interesting enough, when I was the summer before I was about to go into high school, we moved to a new town. And actually, at the end of my 8th grade year, just before that was out, we moved. So I moved to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, from a smaller town called Alexandria, Louisiana. So that summer, I didn't know anybody, and I had gone to a summer camp where a counselor had taught me a few guitar chords on an acoustic guitar. And when I got back home, I just kind of gravitated to that, sat in my room and just started teaching myself to play guitar. And so from that, spent the summer doing that. And by the time I could change chords fast enough, to kind of actually play a song. Yeah. Then I started writing, and I just kind of discovered songwriting as a way to express what I was feeling, and also to explore what I was feeling. Because when you write, that you kind of have to know what you're wanting to say, so you have to know how you feel. Mm-hmm. So. And I think being maybe, in the early stages of teen angst or whatever you want to call it, that was kind of a time of exploring what you feel and what you believe, and I was a pretty quiet, shy, so it was really, I found it to be very therapeutic, and it just stuck with me. So then I found myself just writing all the time. And, that's why I started writing, and that's why I continued to write.
What chords did you start with? Did you start writing with like the same 4 chords, or was it like what you had learned on the guitar?
Yeah, the great thing, well, I tell you what I started with was, I started with a book called Instant Fun with Guitar. Okay. And so I was playing these really old songs, like the Old Gray Mare, and some of these old, so basic 3 or 4 chord songs, and and from there, I also started listening to albums. And back then, they were albums, and you could. I was really into. Oddly enough, I was really into John Denver.
Okay.
So at the time, and we're talking, this was the mid '70s, and the singer-songwriter, acoustic guitar artists that were in vogue for sure. James Taylor, Dan Fogelberg, all these kind of, So I was playing acoustic guitar, so I was really into that stuff. So, but John Denver was at the peak of his career then. So I was really into that. And so, but what you could do is you could buy the album, and then you could buy the songbook that accompanied the album, which had the squares with the dots
right
on the
yes.
I would sit in my room and just try to play along with the albums, and also looking at the songbooks. And so what happens when you do that? It's like, oh, well, that's a chord I've never seen before. Oh, how do I play that?
Right.
And then when I was writing, I would try to incorporate these new chords that I'd learned into song, and you find one new chord that's kind of a new color, and it informs you or inspires a melody or whatever. So it was really, very rudimentary, self-taught kind of process, and discovery through all of that. But that's kind of how I first started writing, by emulating the people that I was influenced by, and also obviously being influenced by them, and that was it.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. So how did you feel about moving to Baton Rouge? Was that something you wanted to do or didn't want to do? Or you're like, oh, this might be a new opportunity? Or like at 14, you were like, whatever.
Yeah, no, I wasn't overly thrilled about it. I mean, all my friends that I had been going to school with, elementary school, junior high, everybody, talking about going into high school and going into, there were basically two big high schools in the town where I lived, and you were going to one or the other based on where you were zoned. And but I had a whole bunch of friends that were going to be going into high school, and I was not going to go with them,
right?
Because we were moving. So, and then I also, had a girlfriend, as much as you can have a girlfriend at that age, and so it was. Yeah, it was not. I don't want to say it was traumatic, because that's over dramatizing. But I mean, for a 14-year-old, it was kind of traumatic. And I can remember, because we driving away, and I remember sitting in the back seat of the car, and it had the radio station on, and as we got farther and farther away from my hometown, the radio was starting to fade. The signal was getting weaker and weaker. And I just remember pathetically putting my ear up against the speaker so I could just hear the radio coming from that town for as long as I possibly could, and then it faded away and it was gone,
Oh my God, that's heartbreaking.
I know. That's
heartbreaking.
Like, oh man, yeah, it was. And then, but out of that came, and when learning the guitar, and then writing songs, and then writing sad songs about that, or missing the girl I'd left behind, or all of that kind of stuff. It was. Of course, looking back on it now, it was great, because I might have never taught myself to play guitar had that not happened, and started writing songs and all that kind of stuff. So, but at the time, yeah, it was awful.
Right. Okay. Now, with your first song, Lady Wind, how long did that take you to write? Or did that just kind of like pop into your head and you're like, oh, first song?
Yeah, it did, and that was, the remnants of, it was about leaving someone behind,
right.
And if you heard it, you would probably go, "Oh, that didn't take you long to write, did it?" Because, um, yeah, I don't remember. I seem to remember it just kind of flowing out of me, and and for good and bad of it. It was not great poetry, and it was, but it was something that sparked me to go, I want to do that again. I want to keep writing, because like I said, that it was like, wow, I can really express myself when I do this. And it's almost like, no one's listening and no one's watching, so I can say whatever I want to say.
Yeah.
It's kind of like now being on Facebook, But
yeah.
And there was a certain kind of release that I felt by being able to do that.
Yeah. When you sit down to write a song, do you start by is there a melody that's floating around in your head, or like a hook, or do you have some words that are coming around? Is it like lyrics or melody? Does one come before the other?
Well, there are different ways that happens. I would say, generally speaking, I tend to write off of music. I've never been one to write a piece of poetry and then put music to it.
Okay.
So I usually will kind of sit around and mess around with music, and then if a melody comes out of it, and then that might inspire a lyric. Or I keep a title book, and anytime I have a lyric idea, I write it down in that book. And so sometimes if I'm writing music and I get onto something that I like, I might go to the title book and see if there's a title or something that might fit with this piece of music that I'm messing around with, or this melodic line or something,
Yeah.
And or sometimes it might be, I have an idea, a lyrical idea for a song. I need to see if I can find a piece of music that would fit it,
Right.
But and then let the music drive the lyric ultimately, and then finish the lyric that way. So rarely have I ever been successful with putting music to an existing lyric.
Okay.
Completely, yeah.
And how long were you writing independently for yourself to express yourself before you got hooked up with an artist and started writing for someone else?
Well, I wrote all through high school, and then into college, I was still in Baton Rouge. So
right.
I didn't really. I knew that I loved music and I loved writing, but I didn't know that you could really make a career out of that. And I knew that there were people that were obviously in the music business that were, and early on I thought I wanted to be a singer-songwriter, so I was kind of thinking in terms of being an artist, and but there again, living in Baton Rouge, it's like that seemed kind of like a pipe dream, and
okay.
And so I went from high school I went to LSU in Baton Rouge, and I studied landscape architecture.
So
that was my major, and I was in my third year at LSU when I decided this is not what I want to do. And I had found out through a friend, someone told me about, at the time, Belmont College. It's university now, but Belmont College in Nashville, and they had a recording studio, and you could major in music business, and you could, learn about studio engineering and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, what? And so I drove up to Nashville with a friend of mine to check out the school. And when I got here, and I was like, oh, I had no idea anything like this existed, and this is where I want to be. So that is the point where it's like, okay, I'm going to go to Nashville and I'm going to get this out of my system. I'm going to go try to hang with the big boys, and if I can't, if nothing happens with it, then at least I try, and I won't say I won't be 20 years from now going, boy, I wonder what would have happened if I'd done that,
Right.
So that's kind of what.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'd say that's kind of what got me here.
Right. Why did you pick landscape architecture or design?
Well, there's a side of that I've always liked. When I was in high school, I took a class called I went to a magnet school, and there was a class, architectural drawing, that I took, and I've always liked design, and I liked architecture. I liked designing houses and that kind of thing, and but after I took that class, I think I realized, well, I'm not really interested totally in doing that, but and there was I think probably because there was too much math involved, but landscape architecture, which felt a little more free form, and in dealing with free form design and outdoors design and plants and things like that, was interesting to me, and it kind of incorporated the drafting aspect of architectural drawing, as well as more freeform design spaces, and so it interested me, and I also I worked as a draftsman at an engineering firm through college for a little bit, and I just found that fascinating. Not that I necessarily wanted to do that for my life, but it was and I still I love that kind of stuff. I love renovating and repurposing and redesigning and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, did you?
It's another artistic outlet, and I got in landscape architecture. You're building a lot of models and creating something out of nothing, or that wasn't there before, and all of that is really kind of similar. The creative process is in all of that.
Big time. Was there like a big? Did you feel like you were taking a big risk when you were going to Nashville, or were you kind of like, I really just don't like this, the landscape? I can always go back to that if I want to. Let me go try this out.
Yeah, I think I had determined. I mean, there were some other things that had happened, like I had been dating someone for a couple of years at that point, 2 or 3, and then we broke up,
okay.
which made me kind of reassess. I think part of why I was hanging around Baton Rouge is because she was there too, and so that breakup kind of made me go, well, what do I really want to do? I'm not tied here emotionally to anything or anyone, and I think that's when it kind of woke me up to just going, what do I really want to do? And I'm however old I was, 21, 22, like, what do I want to do? I don't want to dig in the dirt for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
That's not what I want to do. I love music. I love songs. I love doing it, and so I actually went to my guidance counselor at LSU and said, I really, well, there were two things that happened. I had a communications class at LSU, and you had to, most of the people were in the landscape curriculum, but what you had to do is your project was you had to do something on camera, and it could be whatever you wanted to do. You just had to do it in front of camera.
Okay.
And so a lot of people, because they were in the landscape curriculum, they would do something like, I'm going to show you how to pot a plant, it'd be a how-to video, or I'm going to show you how to to plant a garden, or different kind of things like that. So there were all these people doing that kind of stuff. My project, I sat on a stool with my guitar and said, I'm going to sing a song that I wrote. And so I played the song that I wrote, and when I was done, the teacher, the professor, the first thing he said was, "What are you doing in landscape architecture?" And I said, "I don't know." So that was one moment. And then I went and talked to a guidance counselor and told, was telling him about my dilemma of, I'm not sure I want to be in landscape architecture, and I really like music, and he gave me great advice, because he said that he went through this when he was in college. He said, figuring out what he wanted to do, and he said, I sat out a semester and cleared my head and tried to figure out what I wanted to do. And he said, maybe you should do that. And that's what I did. So I sat out a semester, and then I looked into the music department at LSU. And they had composition and all that, and I went there to explore that, and it was so not what I was about. It was very it was very much the upper crust of the music world of and study theory and composition in a way that was it's like no I just want to write pop songs. This stuff is over my head, and so I realized I didn't belong there. And then in the course of doing all that is when I found out about Belmont, and then when I went there. So, but as far as I might have strayed from your original question, but I think you were asking, did I feel like it was risky?
Yes, taking a risk.
Yeah, and it was at that point. It was not. I didn't think of it as risky. I thought of it as adventurous and more of a, what have I got to lose? The girl that I loved left me, and I don't want to be a landscape architect. So, why not? Why not go for it while I'm untethered to anything, and just follow my dreams for. I will say a footnote to that is me and that girl got back together.
Oh yeah.
And after I had applied for Belmont and had gotten accepted into the program and all that, and a lot of my friends thought that I wouldn't go because we had gotten back together. But at that point, I was determined to go, and I did go, and then eventually we got married. And and we're still married.
Footnote.
So
that's a big footnote.
Yeah, we got back together, and she graduated from LSU, and then she came to Nashville, and then we got married, and we have 3 kids, and we've been married 33 years now. So yeah.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's that. Wow! What a story. That
Yeah.
When you got to Nashville, what were this is like a broad question. What were you doing to keep afloat, to make money? And then how did was Amy Grant like your first kind of, I don't know what you call it, a big break? Or was there one prior to that? What was the order of events that kind of got the wheels spinning and primed the pump?
Yeah, well, when I came to Belmont, like I said, I didn't know anyone.
Right.
I didn't know, and so as far as the money is concerned, I got student loans.
Okay.
Because the school was expensive.
Yeah.
So I applied for student loans. I got that. I moved into the dorm, and I did not know who my roommate would be. I actually ended up having 2 roommates because the room that I got at the dorm was a bigger dorm, so there were 3 of us in there.
Okay.
And then I really just, for the first semester or maybe the first year, I just kind of it absorbed everything. I didn't know anything about the music business, and I took a class that was Intro to Music Business, and it was they were teaching about publishing and things like that. And I thought a publishing company was where they printed sheet music. I didn't know anything other than that. And then, through that discovered, okay, publishers are where writers get signed, and then that you have people that pitch your songs, and, you do demos and they pitch your songs, and they, help you network and connect with other people, so it's like, oh, that's what a writer does. They try to find a publisher,
Right.
And so I was just kind of soaking it all in, and I didn't come to town and go, here I am, Nashville.
Right.
Yeah. And the great thing about going to a school like that is there are a lot of other people that are doing the same thing, and there are people there that want to be publishers, and people that want to be engineers and producers and songwriters or artists or all that, and so you have this community of people that kind of need each other,
Yeah.
and because if you go into the studio there, get studio time, and you want to do a session, well, I need someone that can play drums and bass and guitar, and I need singers, and I need an engineer, and all that kind of stuff. So everybody pools their resources together, and you go in and you make your demos. And in my case, it was making demos of songs that I had written, and
Yeah.
So and just little by little, you're building a network of people, and it's so much. This business is so much about who you know,
Isn't it? Isn't it?
Yeah. So which you discover along the way, but so that was it, and then actually, as far as what advanced me into that world, there were a couple of guys that I went to school with that were interested in being publishers, and they were interns at publishing companies at the time or something, but they were also very entrepreneurial, and they were starting their own publishing, and they liked the way that I wrote. We partnered up, and they had access to studios after hours, on Music Row, and because they worked there, and
Yeah.
I would go and do guitar vocal demos and things like that, and through that and through those connections is actually how I got one of my first publishing deals, because the friend of mine, his name was Chris Smith, he was a tape copy boy at the time, which was someone who just made, back then they were on cassette tapes, they would make cassettes of the songs that then the song pluggers could then take around and pitch to whoever was looking for songs. So, but he worked his way into a song plugging position, which meant you could sign your own writers, bring your own writers into the company, and he introduced me to the publishers there. And so through that networking was really how I got one of my first publishing jobs, was through someone I went to school with.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, because it really is all about who you know and the relationships you make.
Yeah.
So
much.
Yeah. So what was the beginning then for you with Amy Grant? Was that a continuation of this, just meeting more people, and eventually it was like, well, we need someone to write songs for this person. Do you want to try out songs for that person? Was it organic?
Yeah. Well, yeah, kind of. Actually, okay. So there was a class. Actually, that class I was telling you about, the Intro to Music Business,
Mm-hmm.
and the final project for that class was you had to interview someone in the music business, and it could be anyone in any facet of the music business. but you had to get an interview with someone that worked in the business. So I had done that. I had interviewed a session player, a keyboard session player, a guy named Shane Keister. And so anyway, ironically enough, after I had been at Belmont for a year or two, then my brother Kerry came to Nashville, and he, for a minute, went through the music business program. I mean, maybe a semester.
A minute.
And we lived together, and he took that class, and he had the same assignment, and he had to interview someone in the music business, and he took it upon himself to he wanted to interview Amy Grant. And I mean, there's a longer story, but basically he ended up getting an interview with Amy Grant, and he also was able to make a connection with Amy Grant's manager, who was a guy named Mike Blanton. And he was also trying to interview, but could never get an interview with him. So, but he ended up leaving a tape of my songs with the receptionist that ended up on Mike Blanton's desk. And Mike Blanton, after hearing it, wanted to meet with us. My brother at one point kind of fancied himself my manager, sort, you know? Yeah. And so, anyway, through that, Mike Blanton became aware of my music and wanted to develop a relationship with me because of that. And he was a management company, and there was also a record label there called Reunion Music. And so he managed Amy Grant. Yeah. And so he kind of brought me into that world, the Blanton Herald world, and the same thing, kind of, you know, a family atmosphere, and so through that, there was this new artist, this guy named Billy Sprague, who was a writer and a singer, and he was going to be making his first record. And Mike Blanton put us together to write. And so we wrote a song together that Billy then put on his first record. So that was my first cut. And then after that, there had been a couple of songs that I had written that got pitched for the next Amy Grant project that was happening, and those two songs were recorded on the album that she was doing at the time, and those were my first, like, really big cuts for me at the time. So in a roundabout way, the answer to your question is yes. That was my break, was having a couple of songs recorded on an Amy Grant album. And at the time, Amy Grant was pretty big, especially in the Christian music world. She was at the top, and then she was also her star was rising, you know, at that point too. So it was a significant to have a song. I mean, she was selling, you know, it was gold, platinum, you know, her albums were in that realm of sales. So to have a cut on an Amy Grant record, regardless, you know, of what genre you were in, you know, as far as a songwriter, that was something to shoot for, because songwriters, you know, want to have songs cut with artists that are selling a lot of records, you know. Yeah. That kind of validated that kind of helped to validate me as a songwriter.
Yeah, that's like such a crazy story. You can't make that up. I mean, that is like,
yeah, I know. Yeah.
Thank God for brothers. No.
Yeah. Exactly.
So how long were you in Nashville before this started to happen? Was this all in college?
Yeah, I would say, well, I went to Nashville in 1982, and that song and those songs with the Amy Grant thing, I would say that happened around 84, 85. So I was there for 2 to 3 years before that, when that happened. Actually, I think it was 84. So, yeah, a couple of years. Yeah.
Okay, so I have some specific questions about the songwriting process with an artist, and okay, so do you have a meeting with like an artist before you start writing for them, and you guys talk about like their sound and what they kind of want to get from different pieces of music, or is it range from you like writing a whole album or just songs? I'm kind of curious, like a little breakdown of that.
Yeah, it's kind of all of the above. It depends. Every situation is different. There's a side of the songwriting process where you're just writing songs, like or collaborating. You get with someone and write a song, and you either go, hey, this particular artist is looking for songs. Let's try to write something that we can pitch to them. That's one side of it. And you do a demo, and then you send the demo to the artist or the manager or the producer or the record label, whatever you have your inroads to that artist with, and those are just kind of the cold pitches, and then there is the part of a process where if you're fortunate enough where you know the artist, or you can be put in a room with the artist and write with the artist. Okay. Then you've eliminated a lot of the middlemen, because you've gone right to the source, and you're including them in the songwriting process of it. And then if the song is good enough, if the artist likes it and they're like, hey, I want to put this on my album, that's another way of doing it. And that's probably an easier way to get a song on an album, Yeah. And then another way is if you're producing the album and you're also writing, and you then, of course, have direct contact with the artist. Hey, here's a song I wrote. Would you be interested in doing this song?
And what sorry.
Yeah.
What got you into producing?
Well, there's a part of you're always producing when you're doing your demos of the songs that you write. If you're doing any kind of anything beyond a guitar vocal, piano vocal type demo, you're going to bring in a group of session players and a singer. If it's not something that I could sing myself, so you're always there's a part of being a producer that kind of comes with the territory. But then as far as the kind of professional side of producing, or the opportunity to do that, actually for me it kind of fell in my lap a little bit, in that I had worked on several albums with an artist, Michael W. Smith, and I went on the road with him, and then we ended up writing. I did a lot of writing for him for his albums, and so about the second or maybe the third album that we were doing together, he was moving into a new house, and his wife was having a baby, or maybe their second baby or whatever. And anyway, he was trying to finish this record, and I was writing. I did a lot of lyric writing for him. So I would come in, and he had a track that was half-baked that he had done, and I would come in and say, hey, here's what I've got. Here's the lyric I have, and he would play me what he had of the track so far, and I started going, hey, it'd be cool if you did this and this, or when you do the vocals, if we did this kind of vocal thing or something. And he's like, oh yeah, that would be cool. And so kind of every time I'd go in would make suggestions like that. And at one point he said, "Hey, how would you feel about coming in and just helping me finish this record? You know, like be co-producer and help me finish." Like, yeah, okay. So, and so then and from that led to some, you know, like with anything, you do something and it opens the door to doing more of that. And, you know, I got asked to produce a song for someone, and then that turned into, hey, how about doing an album on this new artist that we're signing? And, you know, and so I kind of became a producer because of that. And I always saw producing as a way to just have more. It was a vehicle for my songwriting. You know, I've never seen myself as a producer like some of these mega producers are. That I always saw it as an extension of the songwriting, or a way to have more control over the way my songs end up sounding. You know, if you're producing them, you have a little more control over, you know, kind of helping them get realized the way they were heard in my head, you know?
Yeah. That's okay. So then with producing, did you always focus on like creating a new sound for an artist? Did you ever think of it like that? Or it was just, oh, this is what I like. This is what I've written. Let's do it. Because I've heard that, you know, with like different artists, they have a sound, or you need a new sound, and that's how you get a new artist to become like big.
Yeah.
What have you?
Yeah. And I think there are people that kind of know how to do that better than I do. I think there's something you can create a new sound for an artist if you surround them with new people that they haven't worked with before, you know.
That's simple.
Because, and you know, for me, it's like I do what I do, and that's going to be a new sound for someone that hasn't worked with me before, you know. So it's not like I'm not sure that I could go in and create a whole new sound for someone purposely that was like out of my wheelhouse, you know.
Yeah.
So and sure, yeah, I think you're always trying to stretch, and I don't want to just constantly repeat myself either. And so there's a certain part of trying to figure out the core of who an artist is, or, you know, and try to facilitate that on some level. But at the same time, I was never going to produce someone that I didn't feel like I had something to contribute from my own musical knowledge or lack thereof, you know. So there's somewhat a bit of a calculation in that, and then some of it is organic. I'm about relationships, and do I connect with this person on some sort of fundamental, you know, whether do we have some sort of similar musical taste, or you know, or do we get along? Do I like this person? Do I like the way they sing? Do I like the way they think? Do they, you know?
Yeah.
It's more, in that sense, it feels a little more, it's very organic. You know, I don't like to force any kind of relationship situation in the musical world. So, consequently, I don't go out and plug myself. Hey, you got to use me. You got to let me produce your record. You know, I've never been that. It's kind of more like the things happen organically, and then it feels like it hasn't been a forced situation, and I'm just more comfortable that way.
Yeah. Is that kind of how you started to move into the musical theater world?
From an organic place?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, pretty much. It was, a long organic process, and there, that involved my brother as well, and because we had always talked about we both always wanted to write a musical. We were in theater in high school, and just always loved it, and so we knocked around ideas throughout. My brother's became a screenwriter, and after he left Nashville, and then I pursued the songwriting route. But we had these ideas that we would toss around, and one of them was this Something Rotten idea, which was at the time was just called that Shakespeare idea. Anytime we were together, it was kind of in the back of our minds, and anytime we were together, it's like, hey, I had another idea on that Shakespeare thing. What if, and then we throw out a what if scenario, and it'd be, oh yeah, that could be good. And the next time it'd be, hey, I've had this idea, what if this and this? Oh yeah, that could be funny. We should write that sometime. That was that's about as organic as you can get with that.
Yeah.
Because it'd be about 5 minutes of, oh yeah, we should write that one day. We did that for like 15 years,
Yeah.
And then at some point it was like, if we're ever going to do this, we should really get serious about it, and we should figure out how to take it to the next step.
Yeah. Once you got serious about it, was that a fast moving train, of ideas and what have you? Or was it still the plot kept changing, or little things were changing along the way as you were creating it?
Well, sure. I mean, at one point we decided, first of all, we knew we don't know anything about how to pitch a musical.
Right.
What do you have to do? Do we have to write a whole musical? Write all the songs, write the book, do all that kind of stuff? Because like in my world, how do you pitch a song? You write a song and you do a demo, and then you pitch it to people, and see if they want to do it. It's like, and so was the musical just a bigger version of that? So
yeah.
Fortunately, we knew Kevin McCullum, who's a Broadway producer, and so Carrie said, we should call Kevin and ask him. So that's what he did, and said, what would you need to pitch a musical? What do you need? And he said he produced a lot of musicals. Avenue Q, he said Avenue Q was 3 songs and an idea. Oh. And In the Heights was a concept, and so we were like, well, we've got that. Can we pitch you our idea? So he said, sure. And we all kind of got together out in L.A. when he was going to be out there on a trip to L.A. And so I flew out there a few days earlier. And we, at this point in the process, we had, the tentpole ideas and a few song ideas. They were not full songs, but there were enough of songs to show, here's how we would write, here's what it would look like. So we went to dinner and pitched him the idea, and then went back to my brother's place. I sat down and played him some of the song ideas. And then we weren't sure. He was like, this might be a movie idea. Like, no, I think it's a musical. and he left, and we were like, this may not go anywhere. And then we started talking about where else could we pitch this idea if Kevin doesn't like it. But about a week later, he called. I mean, we sent him the materials for him to live with. He went back to New York, and then he called about a week after that and said, I think you guys have something here, and we should talk about moving forward. he had called my brother to tell him that, and so Carrie called me and said, Kevin thinks we have something and wants to move forward. And it's like, uh-oh.
What else?
Now we have to write it.
Yeah.
Well, now we have to write it, you know. So that's kind of what started the process. And then we knew we wanted a third writer. We wanted a writer on the book side.
Yeah.
And that's where our other co-writer came in, John O'Farrell. He eventually came in. And, you know, we started the process. Kevin suggested he thought he knew of a director that he thought would be great for it, which was this guy, Casey Nicolau, who had just come off the heels of directing Book of Mormon. And we're like, great. We pitched the idea to Casey really quickly, and he loved it and said, yeah, I'm in. And it's like, wow, this is happening all very fast, you know. And we now have a bona fide Broadway producer and a bona fide Broadway director attached to this project that we've been tossing around for 15 years, you know.
Oh my
so
goodness.
It was kind of wild and daunting, but so beneficial, because now we had these seasoned Broadway people that could help guide us, you know, in the places where we didn't know what we were doing. You know, they could. So it was really, I always equated it to, it was like going to theater school.
Yeah.
And we were being schooled in the stuff that we wrote and did in our first year versus what we did in our fourth year. That we had grown so much over that course of time just by having that guidance, you know.
Wow.
And it took 4.5 years to write it, and to speak into what you said about as far as like writing and changing and stuff like that. That happened the entire process. It was always being written and rewritten and tweaked, and songs being thrown out and new songs being written, and it was an insane process, and it was by far the hardest thing I've ever done.
Wow. Do you work well under pressure?
That's a good question. I work under pressure.
Yeah, but not by choice.
Yeah, I don't thrive. I don't desire to work under pressure, because I'm someone who likes to be very prepared, and so I don't love that aspect of it, but I've been able to do it, but it's not my choice. And when I have the choice, I like to. I'm the kind of writer and that likes to stew on things, you know, write something, live with it for a while, you know, come back a week later. Now, what do I think of it? You know, and
yeah.
there's just you just can't do that in theater, unless, especially when there are when you're headed towards we got a workshop to do, you know, we've got to have material ready, or we've got a show opening, you know.
Yeah.
You've got it. So it's a different kind of pressure, and I will say I think I will be better at it the second time around, because now I know what to expect.
Okay.
But and I can prepare myself a little bit more, but I'm not a very off the top of your head kind of person, you know.
Yeah.
I like to absorb all of the information and then go back and live with it, and then come with it. You know, I don't think I'm as good in a room with a bunch of people.
I see.
Part of it is just my own personality, and my stems from my whatever shyness and you know, insecurities and all of that kind of stuff. It's like I'm not quick. That's just not one of my gifts. I'm not fast in the room, you know.
Yeah.
Unless I'm with people that I just feel completely safe and comfortable with, you know.
That makes all the sense in the world. Are you feeling the pressure with Doubtfire, or not so much?
Yes, I try not to think about it.
Oh, sorry.
No. I don't mean that. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
No, there is a pressure that comes with it, with that being, you know, it's such a beloved title.
Yeah.
And so there's a certain responsibility feel to treat it with the respect that it deserves and all that, and know that there's going to be people there are expectations of what it should be and shouldn't be, but then there's a side that's like, okay, you can't think about that too much that it becomes debilitating, and that you can't feel free to explore and try to come up with what we feel is the best way in to this piece, you know. So it's kind of a duality that goes on there with being aware of all of that and feeling responsible for all of that, but also trying to let it go and just put your head down and create and try to do the very best thing that you can do, you know. I mean, we are plenty enough hard on ourselves in this process of all of it to you know, to be in check with everything. If it's, you know, if someone is saying that this is not good enough, believe me, I've already said it 10 times already, you know.
Okay. Are you going to your title book for ideas for this show, or is this all coming from like the movie for you, or you're trying to make like a hybrid of obviously something new, but something that still keeps true to like what people remember?
Yeah, I mean, this and Something Rotten, both those are not title book songs. The title book is, you know, when you're is a whole different thing. When you're writing musicals, you're so dictated by the story, and unless by coincidence there would be something in a title book that would apply. I don't even go to the title book when I'm working on the musical ideas, because you're trying to find you're trying to come up with stuff that is appropriate for the story that you're telling, you know. So
yeah,
I would doubt that there would be any existing titles that would work, you know. So you have to feed off of the story, and then in the sense of Mrs. Doubtfire and the movie, yeah, there are iconic scenes in the movie that you can't ignore. You know, it'd be disappointing if you don't have certain things that are in the movie. So what you do is you try to incorporate those in, and then you find places where maybe the movie could have focused a little more on X, Y, Z, you know, and maybe it's develop this character a little more, or develop this relationship a little more, go deeper here and do that, you know, and try to round it out relationship wise and story wise. And then also the big thing with adapting a movie into a musical, you have to answer that first looming question, which is why.
Yeah.
You know, why is this a musical? You know, does it sing? And if it does sing, where does it sing? You know, and so those are the things that you otherwise you go see. I've seen musicals before that were adapted from a movie and leave going, why was that a musical? And then I've seen some where it was like, oh wow, it found its place in the musical world and became an entity unto itself. And you've got the movie, and that's great, and then you've got the musical of the movie, and that's great, and it's its own thing. And that's what you're trying to do, is help it to find its place in that world.
Wow, well said, and that's so true, because you can see the difference, or hear the difference.
Yeah.
Rather, when you go to a musical.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. This conversation has been incredible. I'm so glad I could pick your brain over all of these different things. We didn't even get to all the questions. There's just so much to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
I'm loving this. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up here, but I'm curious, how do you define success? Like, what is success to you?
Oh, wow. I don't know. I mean, I think success, obviously there's a part of it is being able to continue doing what you love to do.
Yeah.
And, in terms of commercial success, I guess, or business success, I mean, that is it. I mean, I don't know if defining it by terms of how much money you make at doing it or anything like that. I don't. That feels a bit shallow, I guess.
Okay.
It's like, oh, the more money you make, then that defines your success. But I think you can be miserable in that kind of success too if you're not doing what you love to do. And I think for me, I've never been ultimately motivated by money. I mean, obviously you have to make a living at doing it in order to be able to continue doing it, so it has to be in there. But I have certainly passed up on things that would have paid a lot more because it just seemed like it would be something that I wouldn't enjoy doing, and taken something that paid less because I felt more passionate about it. I felt like I could sink myself into it. And and that doesn't necessarily mean that it has gone on to become a commercially defined successful project, but it has satisfied me, or quenched my soul,
Yeah.
And it's like and I have gotten something from it, and to me, and it has moved me on some level, and to me that is more of a success story than what the bottom line money figures were, on a personal level. So, and like I said, you can't do 10 of those and expect, unless you're going to deliver pizzas on the side too, whatever.
Right.
You have to make a living doing it. So, but I think I can look back and say most of the time I have followed my heart, and more times than not, fortunately, that has paid off.
That's great.
And
that's great that you can say
and
that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So if you could metaphorically speaking put a word or a phrase on a billboard for millions of people to see, is there anything that comes to mind?
I think if it relates to people have asked me before, advice or what do you say, and I think I've kind of filtered it down to the thing that I tell people the most, and what I feel like applies to me, or that has helped me, is just to say, be a finisher.
Okay.
Because there, and I think that's kind of how I live, is I want to be a finisher. and that is to say, it's easy. It's so easy and exciting to start things, start new ideas, and then you get to a point in the process where it, the middle is hard. The middle of everything is hard, and there's a tendency to abandon that and go to the other new thing that you've just thought of and jump on that. And if you do that so many times, then you've got a lot of unfinished things. And what comes with that is you don't have a sense of accomplishment. And so for me to say it to someone else or say it to myself, be a finisher. See something through, and then see how rewarding it feels to have completed something. And it may not be great, it may not be a moneymaker, but you get in the habit of finishing. And the more things you finish, the more things you have to show, So if that makes sense, that's kind of what drives me, is to get past the part that's hard, which is the middle, and then finish.
Wow. Yes, that makes a whole lot of sense. And I love that. It's so true too, because it's so, especially if you're creating new things, you're a creator, it's so exciting to be like, I have a new idea. But what's the end result?
So exciting. And you get all the new idea out, and it's like, okay, now I got to make all this work together. And, it seemed like it had such potential. And then it's like, oh, wow. Now it just feels like this really sucks, or, this is really hard. Oh, I had this other new idea. Oh, yeah. Let's think about that one. And, there's a certain part of that. I mean, there are certain things that you just go, okay, you have to cry uncle on, okay. But there are things that are just, they have potential, but they don't come easy, And I have just found personally, it's like you just push through and get to the other side of it. It's like, wow, that was hard in the middle, but I got through and I finished it, and I feel really proud of myself for doing that. And I can check it off my list, and feel good about starting something else. I don't have without having this pile of unfinished stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it does contribute to the way you ultimately end up feeling about yourself,
I agree with that. Definitely.
Yeah.
Wow. Wayne, this conversation, thank you. Thank you for talking. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Wayne Kirkpatrick.
You've been listening to Entertainment X, the podcast. You can follow Entertainment X on Instagram at _EntertainmentX_. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join Clay next week for another curiosity conversation on Entertainment X. Thank you for listening.